Present answer. Our mind is a pretty interesting thing. Most of the time we're so occupied with what's going on around us. We're engaged in input of the senses. And we have to have those to function on this planet. Our five senses are a wonderful interface that allows us to navigate with the body. But what happens is we mistake the things we see and feel and taste and smell and touch. We think that's reality. And we have to treat it that way, practically speaking, because we don't want to ignore it. We have to have it. But what's important for us to do is to be able to stand back from that on occasion and experience the larger context, the spiritual aspect, the soul. And as I mentioned in my prayer several times this week, it was like my mind would open to this larger context. I was thinking about something in the three-dimensional realm, and suddenly my being felt like it was much, much bigger than that. And how many times I've been thinking about something, so concentrated on something, thinking, I would like to resolve this so I can move on. And of course that will always be the case. But what it reminded me of is that we have a capacity that we need to engage if we want to find the peace that passes all understanding. If we want to find the peace right in the midst of the whatever challenge it is that we're going through. And I wasn't going through a challenge necessarily, just thinking about something that I can't even remember what I was thinking about. That's how important it was. And how many times are we there, just living our life thinking about whatever's going on in front of us? And we're not aware of this larger context. But you see, the spiritual path is all about coming to this now moment. It's not about adding something. It's not about becoming something more than you are. It's about laying down or developing the ability to lay down the perceptual part of ourselves, not ignoring it, but laying it down for a time, enough time to say, everything's okay. It's really okay. There's this larger reality, this larger context. And that's what we're after. I was reading about Brother Lawrence, and you're probably all familiar with him, at least the title of his book, Practicing the Presence of God. What I didn't know about him is he had his first and most major mystical experience on a battlefield when he was, I think, 18 years old. And it was in the middle of winter. He was in some ferocious battles. He was involved in some real atrocities that were committed against his village and just throughout Europe. But he was in the military, and in the middle of a battlefield, middle of winter, two bad situations. But he saw this tree that had no leaves. And in that moment he said to himself that he knew that tree would soon have leaves, that the presence of God was there in that tree and it would produce leaves. And that was like a moment of great illumination for him, and it never left him. All through his later years, never left him. He was actually wounded in battle, and he was lame. He had a pretty bad limp. And he described himself as being extremely clumsy, someone who broke everything. And very interesting character. But his book is online. It's a talking book. Just type in Practicing the Presence of God if you want to listen to it. It's a series of letters that he wrote, and he had a very practical understanding of this whole mystical thing. He wasn't trying to escape life. He would take the most mundane situations, doing dishes in the kitchen, which he did in a monastery, and he would make it a divine experience. He would open his mind to that higher level and wouldn't say to that situation, as soon as I get these dishes done, I'll be happy. I'll move on. His attitude was, I'll be happy while I'm doing the dishes. Whatever it is I put my hand to, I will acknowledge the presence of God. And so that's, I think, what Jesus also taught. But it's interesting to have, I think, let's see, when Brother Lawrence lived, was it 1400s or something like that? It's quite a while back. One thing you'll notice about any person who has a mystical experience, they will say exactly the same thing as every other mystic says. They speak the same language all through the ages, through every religion. Doesn't matter what it is. The mystical aspect of every religion, you will hear common language. That is, God is present now, you are divine, and you're one with God. That's the message of every mystic. That's what they try to bring to those who listen, is to remind people of that. And of course, if we're so fully engaged with the senses and the senses world, the world of the senses, we don't know how somebody could say you're one with God, because I don't see God anywhere. God, where are you? But God is a presence, a living, creative life force in whom we live and move and have our being. It's an energy field, but it is conscious. It is intelligent. It is foreign to a lot of people. And that's where the intellectual approach to this whole thing becomes a barrier. We have to open our intuition. The presence of God is accessible only to the intuition, not to the intellect. It is conceptually accessible to the intellect, but it's never right. When I had an experience that changed my life, changed the course of my life, it was an experience of God, but it was unlike anything I expected. It was better. But when I would think of God, I would think of this old man in the sky. That's how I was trained. And if I was to have an experience with God, it would be maybe a voice booming from the heavens or something like that. I gradually learned that God is a presence, not a being. And so the awakening I had was completely different than anything I expected, and that's how it should be. That's why it's so difficult to teach it. The only thing a spiritual teacher can do is explain how to put yourself in a position, mentally and emotionally, where you can experience your own God, your own that presence within you and without you. But it doesn't change your world so much as it changes your view of the world. You're going through life and thinking your world may be falling apart or taking a direction you're not particularly happy with, and you have this larger experience. It opens you to a larger context. And there's no fear in that larger context. There's nothing to fear. If you say that at the senses level, you'll be branded a lunatic, because there's plenty to fear. But you realize as a spiritual being that nothing can harm you, not even death. There's no death. And that's probably the thing that most people fear. The fear of death exists only on the physical level, on the level of the senses. But there's a lot of other fears that are just as hard on us. Probably most of us don't go around worrying about dying. We worry about paying bills, or we worry about being overcharged for something, or we We worry about all kinds of things. But that's what we're looking at here is two different aspects, two ways of experiencing life. This is what Jesus is talking about here, I think, calling attention to this. Do you not say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? I tell you, lift up your eyes and see how the fields are now ready for harvest. So we're talking about two dimensions. He's not talking about harvest. He's not talking about fields. He's not talking about plants that grow. But he uses agricultural illustrations all the time to try to explain something that is very difficult to explain. But he's saying on one hand, we have time and space. You plant your crop and a certain amount of time passes before you get a harvest. So we say 4 months to harvest. And then we apply that to everything that we are involved in. You start some project and there's a certain amount of time that will pass before it's complete. So we're always thinking in terms of time and space. He's saying, lift up your eyes, open another part of your mind that doesn't look at life in that way. That says that whatever you are seeking is here now. And what are we seeking? What is our primary objective in life? I have thought about this for a long time, and the answer I come up with is peace, peace of mind. Isn't that why you want to pay your bills? Isn't that why you want to make sure your car doesn't blow up when you're on vacation? You want to have peace, peace of mind. So does peace of mind depend on fixing everything in your life first? And the answer to that, of course, is no. You can be like Brother Lawrence driving down the highway and blow your engine and be happy about it. I have not reached that point myself. We were in Durango, or coming through Wolf Creek Pass one time, many years ago, in a Toyota 4Runner. And the thing kept stopping. And the reason it was stopping is because it had a fuel filter that was plugged up, we found later. Well, we changed the fuel filter before we went on the trip, because that's what we discovered was the problem. So we get to Wolf Creek Pass and it stops, kept stopping. And I would actually have to take a tire pump and blow the fuel line out, take it apart, and run air through it just to open it up and drive another 50 miles. I accidentally had it pointed toward Beth one time, and luckily she didn't smoke. But anyway, we discovered in Durango, kind of a serendipitous arrangement, that we met this mechanic there, that Toyota 4Runners have two fuel filters, and one is under the back seat, at least of that model. So I had no clue what was going on, but the mechanic there knew exactly what was going on. So the reason I'm saying this is I was not peaceful through that whole ordeal. When you get stuck in a mountain pass in a car that doesn't run, that's not a lot of fun. So there's a lot of things like that it's difficult to be peaceful, to say God is present as peace, because if anybody around you says that, you'll want to hit them in the face. You want to slap them upside the head. God may be here as peace, but this car is broken down and I've got a problem. So I'm going to freak out over it. So there's so much of that goes on. That's why we forget. That's why we're brought down, to that level. Life is just endless opportunities to freak out. Our body-based self-image routinely operates in the fields of time and space. So the earth does produce of itself, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. That's a fact. And we cannot ignore that. We cannot ignore time and space as long as we have a physical body. Mind and matter is two kinds of physics. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Material and spiritual law is as different as Newtonian and quantum physics. This is one thing that the near-death researchers are saying. The normal scientist looks at the possibility of leaving your physical body as impossible. It's not possible because they're thinking probably from normal physics, normal Newtonian physics, which work for us quite well at the physical level. So the near-death researchers are saying there's a higher kind of physics, and it's connected to quantum mechanics, quantum physics. And I'm not going to get into any of that because I don't understand it, but they're trying to look for how could our spiritual essence separate from the physical body. The traditional scientist says that the brain generates our consciousness, so it's not possible to have an experience if the brain is dead and the heart stops and we're pronounced dead. It's not possible to have an experience. But the researchers are saying that a new kind of physics, a different level of physics must take over, or must control consciousness. And that's how we're going to have to approach this research in order to understand how this is possible. And I like that idea. I like the idea that we live in two worlds. We know that. I'm a spiritual being and I have a physical body. I'm not my body. I have it. And the body has all kinds of issues. It definitely operates in time and space. If I said, I will meet you in 15 minutes over at King Soopers or something like that, there's two things that go on. First, I make a statement of where my body will be in 15 minutes. But what happens when I say to you, I'll meet you over there, is I see that immediately. I see that happening. I see myself meeting you. It may not be exact when the actual experience happens, but I see that. I may even see myself driving. It happens just in a split second. There's two things going on. So we've got that immediate fulfillment of the imagination, and that is a reality. It's a different reality. And they say that when we lose our physical body, that's the reality we live in. So you think of a place and you're there instantly. The soul is there. It's not remote viewing. It's you're there. You're viewing from your present place. And you could think of a place in China maybe and be there instantly. And think of the money you save and the time and the airport stress, which is all body related. But there's two things going on, and so we say, okay, I can imagine this, but it's really not practical. I've got to get into a car or walk to the store and be there in 15 minutes. So we're on a schedule there. But that's all about the body. So we have to deal with these two worlds that we live in. But are you that body that has to be transported to King Soopers, or are you that person that sees with the mind, with the imagination? That's who we are. So that's what Jesus is saying. When you pray for something, when you think of something, you've got this ability to see it complete, to see it finished. Did you not envision the harvest even before you planted your garden? How many of you have a garden this year? When you pick out the seeds or the plants and all that, don't you see the finished product? If you don't see it yourself, when you get the package, there's a picture of what it's going to look like. So you're actually seeing what you want in your imagination. You likely went beyond that and imagined serving vegetables at your table. You've done that? We do that. Just we don't even think about it. We say, what kinds of things would I like to eat? Well, you imagine yourself eating them. The eyes that see this are the eyes of which Jesus is speaking, the mind's eye, the imagination. Jesus points out that we are to believe we have received that for which we pray. We set aside all materially based logic and we envision as complete a desire we have. We hold the thought that all the universe is working to bring forth this condition or something better. So you envision something. It doesn't mean that it's going to manifest right away, but it's important to be able to envision what it is you want. If you are in need of healing, for example, it's real easy to focus on whatever pain you might have or any physical condition that you might have. It's easy to use your imagination to run through that scenario over and over and over again. What we want is to lift up our eyes and see the fields are ready for harvest. That is, my healing is now coming forth. And don't even think of it that way. Think of my soul, that which I am, is already whole. That's what we're after. But we want to be practical about this, where we come to actually know this is true. That which I am as a spiritual being is complete now. It is whole. My body doesn't feel so well, and it's manifesting this issue. But to focus on your wholeness, it sets up a different type of vibration that allows that wholeness to come through. I can't think of any other reason Jesus would have made this statement about lifting up your eyes. You know, you see time and space, and the answer will come forth. But why would he remind us of this? Why would he remind his followers of this ability? And why would he say, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe you have received it? That's treating it as if receiving it is in the past tense. You already have it. So you ask yourself the question, how would I feel if this came about? And begin to get the energies going in that direction. It makes perfect sense when we understand that the body and circumstances basically follow the mind all around. Emma Fox said life is consciousness. Life is the sum total, or life unfolds as it does. It's the sum total of what is in our consciousness. I've encountered many people that it is so obvious to me why they struggle. You just talk to them for 5 minutes and you can tell just by where they are mentally. Or you can talk to another one for 5 minutes and figure out why their life is working. It's what's going on up there that separates one person from another. It's not what goes into the mouth, it's what comes out, as Jesus said, that is what is important. That's consciousness. Setting aside materially based logic doesn't mean we're abandoning logic. We're aware that we live in two worlds, spiritual and material. We are turning to spiritual logic. Material law follows the blueprint created by our vision. What we mentally see and hold as true is the seed that becomes the blade, the ear, and eventually the full grain in the ear. So our life doesn't unfold randomly. It is consciousness. It's what we're holding within, and I think that's what Jesus is saying. Whatever you want to have happen in your life, hold that vision because it becomes a blueprint for your whole life. It's a very basic metaphysical idea, very basic spiritual teaching. So steps that we can take, and I find this helpful, if you forget about doing an exercise like this, I would recommend jump back into it if you've got something going on in your life right now. You just take a moment to write a brief statement of your prayer request, and don't even have to call it a prayer request, just what about your life would you like changed? What aspect are you working on? What thing, maybe about yourself, some habit or some thing that you would like to have be different. Just write it out. And I think it's a proven technique, very simple, to write it out because it solidifies your thought, clarifies your thought as to what it is you're wanting to establish. Consider it fulfilled. Act as if that which you are asking is already here. It's already complete. And again, don't think you're playing mind games in the sense that, well, it's not here, I look around, I don't see it. But act mentally and emotionally. How would you feel if this thing was complete, if this thing was here? And you put yourself in that state of mind. And you remember that. And you carry that with you through your day, through your various experiences. Because that's where it gets lost. That's where it gets diffused. That's where it gets watered down. Is in the morning you have all this great inspiration, you write this down, you're all enthused about it, you go out to your life and confront all kinds of things and you forget it pretty quickly. When you write it down, set it aside in a place you'll not forget. That is, you've written it down, put it someplace where you can refer back to it. Every time you think of your prayer, give thanks that it's now complete. This or something better. And I've talked about that a lot. I think it's very important to say, I would like this or something better. I don't know what the very best, highest thing for me is in any situation. I have ideas. But sometimes I want to get rid of a struggle when maybe it could be that struggle has something to teach me. That if I got rid of it, I wouldn't learn whatever it is I have to learn. So my prayer would be, God, get rid of this struggle. But if I say this or something better, God may say, I think we might need this struggle for a little while. Until your lights come on. Until you get what it is you need. So that's kind of an interesting thing too, because intellectually we know what we need. We know what's best for us. But we are spiritual beings. You know, what if you could be in the middle of your problem and suddenly you realize everything's okay? Wouldn't that be a position of power? Where that thing could no longer bother you? Sometimes I think that's what is needed. As Jesus said on his disciples, that he would pray that they're not taken from this earth, but they're kept from the evil one. And I envision the evil one as my own brain, my own thinking. Let's find the easy path. Let's find the way out of this. So this or something better, very important way to tag your prayer. Know that God, as the creative life force, is working through all people, places, and things to bring about your desired good. The imagination is not for dreaming only. It is for setting direction for your earthly experience. And that's why we have it, I think. It's a wonderful tool. We so often use it against our highest good by imagining all kinds of things that we don't really want. Okay? This is a very basic idea, very basic exercise that we can do anytime. So it's a very practical approach. All right? Happy Mother's Day. Thanks for coming out. See you next week. The long search begins here. It doesn't really matter where you are. The old ways disappear. They're never gonna take you very far, very far. Through the hills, through the deserts, the valleys and the plains. There'll be times on your journey when you lose everything you've gained. Then your faith will start to waver when it takes you just as far as it can go. You let go that you may live till you see something of a beacon through the haze, through the haze. Night of the soul descends upon the one who finds the light. The world it calls, you lose control to something of a memory from the night. Calls your name, and you turn to see if something's left behind. Then you know there's nothing there for you, and you free another portion of your mind, of your mind. The long search begins here. It doesn't really matter where you are. The old ways, they disappear. They're never gonna take you very far. Go beyond the dark night of the soul, beyond the dark night of the soul.
You've been watching a talk given by Reverend Doug Bottorff here at Independent Unity in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us spread our message. If you would like to support us, you can do so by clicking the button in the right-hand corner of the video screen. We greatly appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching.